Nithyanandam Paramasugadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrusham Tattvamasya Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Just adding a point, like in Gurukul, each and everything we do, we set the right context and the action gets completed.
Just sharing experience. So actually before 1 or 2 days, actually we had some workshop. So actually when we were doing that workshop, actually after the next day I felt bored. So actually I gave my paper to my friend. So I went to my important work. So when I came back, I asked him. He said that he kept it somewhere here. But when I went in surgery, it was not there. So actually I felt bored to even do this workshop. So that time I set a context because so we are doing these workshops because for us to realign our images and actions to enlightenment. The purpose is enlightenment. So when I immediately aligned it, when I just opened some book was there, I just opened it, I got my paper. So from this I understood that when you have any right context for anything, whatever you do, you can easily achieve whatever you want.
Just adding the point, just adding to his point, like what if he's like, just have a right context to everything, anything you do. Like even for brushing and for taking body and for doing the yoga, just have a right context. For that result, you'll be following the right context. You'll be living the right context. That result, you remind you that you are Mahadeva and you need to live like Mahadeva. As how Swamiji told, context is higher than God. Even for like achieving the state of God, you need the right context. So what I feel is like even for achieving the state of God, if you have a wrong context, even that you'll not achieve the space of God. But so just have a right context for everything, anything you do. Brushing, even taking bath, even doing yoga, anything you want to do, just have a right context and do. You'll see that you'll just attain the space of Mahadeva.
I have a question. Just before some time, mm, we was discussing that we need to have right context even for right action. But there's a story in Mahabharata. Once Uttara, the wife of Abhimanyu, once a sage will come to her house. That time she'll take care of him nicely. So the sage will grant her one mirror in that's called as Priyadarsini mirror. In that, whoever sees that mirror, they'll be able to see the person who remembers them constantly. That time they will be. Then afterwards, the Pandavas and Abhimanyu will come back along with Krishna. That time they will think that let us see who likes Krishna the most and who is constantly thinking of Krishna. Then that time Krishna will see the mirror. That time the image of Shaguni will appear. And even before Shaguni's death, Shaguni will get liberated because in his whole life he'll be constantly thinking of Krishna. But his thinking is that how to destroy Krishna and how to make the plans of Krishna failure. He'll be constantly thinking how to defeat Krishna. But even though he was thinking from the wrong context, how did he get liberation?
See, what if he's like, even like the context was wrong, like because Krishna is God, he has his own magical ways of liberating him. Because he was thinking of Krishna all the time, even the right context, because he was thinking of Krishna who was the avatar of Vishnu all the time, because he was God, that's why he got liberated. But for us, like the actions we do, it might be wrong, it might be right. We cannot judging it. Only we have the right context, you can even know that whether it's going to expand us, whether it's going to shrink us more in the space of the illusion. So what if it's like you cannot compare it in God, but what if it's like don't just stop there, just have the right context for every action you do. Even for like brushing, even for eating, have the right context, you'll achieve the space of God.
I have a question. So, example, one person is like about to die. Even at that time, if he constantly reinvent himself, will he at least at that time he'll get liberated?
What if is this? So I have a story related to this. Like in one storybook it was written like there was one man who went to the forest. He saw a girl who was like she was having like all bad qualities, like all those like drinking all those things. Then he fell in love with her and he married her. Then he went back to his house and like started entertaining her. After a few years, even he got all the things which the woman was possessing. So he also started drinking. He also started doing all the wrong things. But then, like some situation happened to him in his life, and like Shiva appeared in his dream and said, "If you constantly think of me, if you constantly pray to me, I'll give you liberation, and you'll be free from all these bad things which you're possessing now." So by that, like the last years, like the last 10 years, which was about to live, he like dropped all his bad habits and he became Brahmin and he started like praying to Shiva every day. He started worshipping Shiva. So by the end of his life, because he was thinking of Shiva all the time for his last years, he got liberated. So what if he's like, even if you think of God at the last moments of your life, because God is always merciful and He wants to enrich you, that's why He'll make you liberated from the cycle of life and death.
I have a doubt. What is the difference between you doing something with the context and without the context?
What I feel is when you do something with the context, you know why you're doing what you're doing. So with that context, when you do that particular action, it'll give us the good effect from which we can align to enlightenment and achieve enlightenment. But when you do something without the context, it doesn't align to enlightenment and it doesn't align to your purpose of life. So you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. So for that particular action, it won't have the good effects for you to align to enlightenment. That is what I feel.
I want to add a point. What I feel is when you do with the right context, you will be doing the thing with in the peak possibility as possible. You will do with full authenticity and full integrity, and there will be no dilution, and you will have conflictless acts that will not give any conflict. But when you do it wrong context, you will be constantly getting diverted away from the goal, and you'll forget the goal, and you will be constantly having conflicts in it, and you will not be doing your peak possibility. You will be doing out of vested interest and out of laziness and boredom, which will not give the full result.
Just adding a point. What I feel is the difference when you do an action with the context and without the context is when you do an action with the context, you keep reminding yourself that your context whenever anything else happens. For example, the context of your life is enlightenment. Whenever you get diverted away from enlightenment, if you have the right context why you are working towards enlightenment, you will keep reminding yourself that this is not the reason why you are doing the action, but the reason is and the context is for you to gain enlightenment. So you'll keep aligning yourself back to the context when you set the right context. You'll keep reminding yourself and you will not get diverted when you have the right context. But when you do not set a right context before doing any action, anything that you may feel is better than what you're doing or gives you more pleasure, you immediately will switch and you will not have a right context for what you're doing. So this is what I feel is the difference between doing an action with and without the context.
What I think is when we do something with the right context, we'll naturally have the inspiration to do that. And when we have the inspiration, we won't get deluded or diverted from what we're trying to do and the goal we're trying to reach. So what I think is you should always have the right context for whatever you do.
Just adding the point, what I feel is like the actions which are done with the context and without the context is if you set the right context for everything, you like even if you get diverted, the right context will save you. Like how in one satsang Swamiji told that he has been giving satsang for all these years, like until when he asked one person what is something, he was unable to answer. That he was about to fall into like the lowest depths of depression, but enlightenment saved him. So same way when you every time when you get diverted from the right context, when you like go like start worrying the bad things, the right context will again keep on again bring you back. He'll always make you remember that you are Mahadeva. He'll always bring you to the space of enlightenment. So that's when you'll achieve the space of God. So what if he's like even if you set the right context for everything, even if you get diverted, the right context will save you and constantly bring you back to the space of which you are supposed to hold, the space of enlightenment.
Like on Gurukul, so what are things we do, or like example brushing or classes or yoga, we just set the right context for doing anything like yoga or brushing. So when you just set the context for it, so that will be useful for you, because when you just set the context, you know what you're doing and what for you're doing. So when you just know that what for you're doing, you just understand and you know what you're doing for. So when you just set the context, that will be useful. But when you just not set the context, it will be useless, because you just do without knowing anything. So when you just do without you knowing anything, it will be useless. So when you just do from the context, it can easily lead you to enlightenment.
Adding to his point, what I feel is like even in Gurukul, we set the right context before doing any action. So when we set the context, we know why we're doing what we are doing. So at that moment, we'll know why we do that, and out of that we receive the complete and positive effect on us, which helps us to align to enlightenment and achieve the space of enlightenment.
I want to add a point. When you're having the wrong context, you will be just following the law of life. But when you're having the right context, you will be with the flow of life, which will keep you constantly aligned to consciousness, and it will be helping you to constantly reinvent yourself and realize and cognize consciousness.
I just wanted to add a point. Like whenever I used to not set a context and do any action, I just used to feel so bored. And like in my studies, example, in my studies, if I don't set without the context when you do the studies, I usually, why should I do? I'll just feel so bored of doing. So when I started setting the right context, why should I do the studies? Then I said that I should be enriching the whole world. So when I set the right context, I did not even leave a gap to for my boredom and laziness to enter into me. I just felt so complete when I set the context.
I want to share my experience. When Swami was speaking about May Varanasi IA, I really wanted to go to May Varanasi IA in Shivoham, but I didn't have the right context. I was thinking we'll go there and enjoy, and we'll visit many places like Vishwanath temple, and we can take bath in Ganga, all those things. Then I went and spoke to my parents with that context. Then they told no money, all those things, no time is there. There are lots of problems, all those things they was telling. Then I just sat and contemplated and internalized and saw why was there that problem, and then I found out that I was having the wrong context. Then I completed with the wrong context and set the right context that I should go to Varanasi IA and Shivoham. For the context is to constantly reinvent myself and align me to enlightenment and to cognize that I am Shiva, I am Shivoham. So the moment I set this context and went and spoke to my parents, all the obstacles got clear, and I was able to make it to May Varanasi IA. So what I feel is, whatever you do with the right context, if you do anything with right context, you can cause your reality and you can cause your desires.
Just sharing the experience. So actually, 2-3 days before, actually before I sleeping, I actually set my context that what time I'm sleeping, and I should wake up on time. When they wake me, immediately I should wake up. So when I set the context and slept, so morning when I actually got before waking up, actually they woke me up. At that time, actually I felt a little sleepy, so I was not able to get up. But after a few seconds, actually I remembered about the context what I said morning. So when I immediately my just sleep just went away, and immediately I got up. So from this I understood that when you set a right context and do anything, even if anything distracts you, even at the last moment, even the context can help you even at the last time for enlightenment purpose.
Just adding this point, like how his experience itself, because he said the right context was sleeping and when he was wake up, that right context itself, even when he was sleepy, the right context brought him back to the right context, and he's like just woke up and like just like how Mahadeva wakes up without any boredom, he just woke up like that. So what I understand from this is like for every action you must set the right context. Even if you get diverted, the right context will bring you back to the space you're supposed to carry, the space of enlightenment.
Okay, I have a question. When we exaggerate on the master and tell that he himself will take care, then why should we set the right context even then for us to do that particular action?
What I feel is only if we have the right context, we'll even be able to exaggerate on master. Like how Swami told in one satsang that context is higher than God because only with context we can reach God. So what I feel is only when you have the right context, even you will be able to exaggerate on the master. So even for exaggerating on the master, you need to have the right context.
Just adding this point, like only with the right context, even exaggerate the master. You set the wrong context, you'll not be even able to exaggerate the master, and all your boredom and tightness will come between, and you'll have the self doubt, you'll have the guru doubt whether will Swami even take care of it. Like how in one of our Balasans example, he shared that because he had the wrong context for going to the May Varanasi IA, that's why he was unable to go. But once he set the right context, all the blockages, all the things, all the obstacles just disappear and he was able to go. So like from his example itself, we can learn that because when he set the wrong context, even when he exaggerated the master, he was unable to go. But once he set the right context, the master just gave his just through his Kailash open to him, and he was able to go to the May Varanasi Ayya. So what if he's like only with the right context, you can even exaggerate the master, and with the wrong context, we'll have the boredom and tiredness to exaggerate the master, and that will not work for you.
Okay, but I have a question. But in my experience, according to me, for me to attend the Cambodia Inner Awakening for kids, I actually, for me, there was no context for me to go. But when I exaggerated it on Swamiji, everything happened. But still, I didn't set the context. I didn't even know the context, and still, I was able to reach there for Cambodia. But where does right context set in? When I exaggerated on the master itself, everything had happened. Then what is the need for a right context?
See, what if he's like, because even when you avoid to set the right context, because you did not have the guru doubt, guru deny, guru hatred, you had complete trust in the master, and when you had the complete trust in the master, you became him and you were able to go. So what if he's like, even when you are having the right context, you just exaggerate the master, when you have the full trust in him, and not even a inch of guru doubt, guru deny, guru hatred, you will become him and you'll be able to make whatever you want into reality.
I have a question what we were just discussing now. So, so does that mean, like just how our Balasan was sharing, that another Balasan just exaggerated on the master with complete trust without any self-doubt or guru doubt, and they were able to go. So does that mean if we have immense trust without self-doubt and guru doubt, will we bring the context out?
What I feel is when you have the immense trust in the complete trust in the master itself will take care and he himself will make you set the right context for the things, and because of the complete trust on the master, he himself will make you set the right context, and because you are having the right context, that will strengthen your trust on the master and it will become a beautiful virtuous cycle.
What I feel is that when you don't have a right context, you won't have trust on Swamiji and you'll start having doubt on him. You'll have doubt on Swamiji and you won't trust him. At one point, you'll think, no, I don't think that this Swami can change my life, and you'll move away from the master. So, what I feel only when you have a right context that yes, he is my master and he will cause my reality of getting enlightened. When you have only the right context of being with the master, uh, will you have the right action and you'll have the enlightenment. When you have the wrong context for being the master, what I feel, you won't be the master, you'll move away from the master.
I have a question. So, how can we hold the right context in every action we do in our day to day life?
We can have the right context in all our actions by constantly seeing and analyzing whether it will align me to enlightenment, and will I be constantly reinventing myself with that context, and will I cognize that I am consciousness or I am Mahadeva. By this constantly analyzing by like whether by this is the context which will help me reinvent myself. You can be constantly aligned to the right context in your actions.
Adding a point, what I feel is how we can align back to our day to the context in our day-to-day life is by whenever any action we do, when we realign back to the context, we can hold that context in us by keep on reminding ourselves and enriching others also to be in that, because when we enrich others to be in the same context, we will also be aligned to that context continuously.
Just adding a point, what I feel is the easiest way to, how to learn to align our context and align our context in our life is just attending the June Varanasi IA, July Varanasi IA. There, Swamiji will teach us how to align our context and he'll help us in every way to align our context to our life.
Like example, adding the point. So example, you're applying the vibhuti ash on your forehead. So example, when you just set a context that you're applying this vibhuti for to be in the space of completion. That is when once Swamiji said. So when you just apply the vibhuti in your forehead, all you just incompletion just goes away, and you just start being the space of completion. So when you just tell that you are Mahadeva and applying that vibhuti, it just fill Mahadeva just fill in you, and he just starts being in you and make everything happen. So when you just start making context for everything and whatever you do, Mahadeva will just fill you.
Just adding this point, like how we discussed before, the right context is just a context which keeps on aligning back to the context of enlightenment and keeps on reminding that you are Mahadeva, always expands you. So when you set the right context itself, it will keep on bringing you back to the space of Advaita. It will start making you live the space of Swamiji, what Swamiji wants you to become, like him only. So when you set the right context to everything, that itself will remind you always. It will make you live the space in which you have created the right context is a space of Advaita and enlightenment. The space which Mahadeva and Swamiji is radiating.
Adding the point, so if you want to set a proper context for each and everything in your life, you can come and join Gurukul. That is when in Gurukul, if whatever things we just set the context and do, so that it just fills. So Mahadeva just fills in us, so that it just becomes useful. When you just set the context properly, so that you can do everything properly. Like example, in my experience, when I shared that. When I slept, when I did completion and slept, so in that experience, when I just did completion in the right context, even at last moment, my cosmos reminded me to wake up and be in integrity. So even at last moment, it just reminds us. Even if you forgets, cosmos just keeps on reminding. Cosmos just continuously move. So when you just move with the cosmos, you can just easily attend. You can just easily be in the space of Advaita and enlightenment.
Just adding a point, what I feel is when you keep aligning the context of whatever actions you're doing, Mahadeva starts flowing through you automatically. Just like how Swamiji said, Mahadeva is always flowing through you. But only because you do not have the right context, you are unable to express Shivoham and Nithyanandoham. So when you keep setting the right context for every action you do, Mahadeva simply flows through you and you start expressing that you are Shiva. That is Shivoham.
What I feel as the best way to align yourself again and again to the context is by constantly daily doing Vaakyaartha Sadhas, because when you are doing Vaakyaartha Sadhas, you will understand and contemplate and internalize and cognize the deeper truths of life, and you will understand the real ultimate goal of the life and the context of the life. And when you understand the context of the whole life, that will inspire you, and you will start being aligned to in each actions to have the right context. So the best way to constantly align you to the context is doing Vakyartha Sadhas daily.
Adding a point, what I feel is you constantly remembering that the purpose of life is enlightenment. You will always do only right things. So for doing the right things, you need the right context. By this way, you can constantly have the right context and hold the right context in each and every moment.
Just adding the point. So if you want to achieve the space of enlightenment and Advaita, is do the spiritual activities and listen to satsang. That is, so when you just listen to satsang every day what Swamiji speaks, so you just constantly reinvent. That is manana. When you just constantly listen what Swamiji tells, so when you just analyze what Swamiji speaks the truths, so when you just start analyzing, that is manana, so it just starts giving you the understanding the deeper truths. That is when you just start doing the spiritual activities, vakyas, satsang and everything, it will easily lead you to the space of enlightenment and Advaita.
With this, we come to the conclusion of today's Vaakyaarthas, and we'll continue to explore into the deeper truths in the further Vaakyaarthas. So, now we'll be concluding with the Purna Mantra.
ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरि ओम तत्सत् सर्वं सद्गुरुपादुकार्पणमस्तु ॐ नित्यानन्दम्